Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about Hurricane Enrique as well as a tropical disturbance that could bring Caribbean trouble with Jamaica on the lookout. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it, everyone. Good morning. This is June 26th, your update. And what you're looking at here is the latest satellite picture. And you can definitely see this area disturbed weather in Oklahoma. That is your cold front. That's bringing some very severe weather in Oklahoma this morning with some flooding rains. And down here in the Gulf of Mexico, that is also a little tropical disturbance that's going to be propagating westward over the coming days. It'll be impacting the Gulf as well as Louisiana. But there's also this little feature down here in the Pacific. That is our first hurricane of the season, which is Hurricane Enrique. And out here in the middle of off the Cape Verde Islands, off the African coast, we do have a tropical wave that'll be propagating westward over the coming days. So let's kind of delve into the details. Here is Hurricane Enrique. This is our first hurricane of the season. It got named this morning. It is a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. It's moving west-northwest of 8 miles an hour. This is actually the fifth storm this season. Actually, that breaks records again for the Pacific. Is the earliest named fifth storm on record. This will continue moving west-northwest. You can definitely see it's going to be hugging the coastline here. So it's going to bring some life-threatening flash flooding and mudslides to portions of southwestern Mexico as it continues to lift west-northwestward over the coming days. But it could be our first major hurricane of the season. It's going to be rapidly developing over the next 36 to 48 hours, and it's going to be right on the cusp of becoming a major hurricane with 110 mile per hour. If it goes to 115, that will be listed as a major hurricane. So, but it is expected to continue going over a little bit cooler waters and lose its luster and then eventually fade. But it definitely brings some rain to Cabo San Lucas as we go throughout into early next week. So let's kind of take a look at over on the Atlantic side with our tropical disturbance that we're going to be talking about. The National Hurricane Center does give it about a 10% chance of it developing over the next 5 days. So it's not in a very conducive environment as of yet right now, but as it continues to move in further off to the west, it could definitely develop more tropical type characteristics, as we'll go into some of those details in this video. So let's take a look at why it's not getting its act together currently right now. I mean, this is pretty early on in the season. This is June. Typically, you don't have storms forming out off the Cape Verde Islands because there's a lot of shear. There's a lot of what they call African dust. And here is that dust that we're looking at this morning on Saturday. You can definitely see this is inhibiting this storm development as will continue moving across to the west. But as we go through time, here's the latest dust outlook for as we go into July the 1st. And you can definitely see we're not seeing the darker, yellows anymore. This definitely starts to fade over time. There is a little bit of a dust that sneaks into Jamaica and to the Cayman Islands as we go into Thursday, July the 1st. But overall, this disturbance is supposed to be south of this dust as it continues moving off to the west here. So as we go into July 3rd, so that's where things start to get a little bit interesting. You can definitely see here's the dust outlook by then. This tropical disturbance will continue to propagate further off to the west. A lot of the guidance has it, pushing south of this dust. So it's not going to be more or less impacting inhibiting the tropical development of this system. You can definitely see some of this dust actually sneaks into the Gulf of Mexico and actually sneaks back into Florida, where they actually already saw some dust early on in just a week or two ago from this African dust. So as we kind of move into the overall water temperatures, you can definitely see that the temperatures are much cooler off the main development region. That's another inhibiting factor of this storm trying to develop out here off the Cape Verde Islands. But you can definitely see As we get into the Lesser Antilles, the water start to warm up a little bit, and especially as we go into the Caribbean and along the Jamaican island and around the Cayman Islands. That's where we could see a little bit higher, activity, a little bit more conducive environment for tropical storm environment, because the water temperatures are going to be increasing by then. You can definitely see the recent upwelling from Claudette off here the coast of off the coast of Florida here. From Claudette upwelling those waters and bringing those cooler waters right along the coast as currently. But let's take a look at the overall ensemble members from this particular storm. So this disturbance, like I mentioned, it has about a 10% chance right now. It's not very favorable environment. But yes, as we get into time, as we go into this weekend, possibly early next week, as it gets into the Lesser Antilles, and especially as we go into the Caribbean, yeah, we can definitely see a little bit more ensemble members trying to pick up on this and trying to get a little bit more conducive for tropical storm development. And yes, it pushes this south of that dust and puts it in that warmer environment. And that's the latest EPS guidance through July the 6th. And the GFS is kind of implying the same way. There's not that many members that are coming on board, but the ones that are bring it south of the island of Jamaica, and then it puts it into the Caribbean by the time we get into next weekend with this tropical disturbance. So let's take a look at this overall, precipitation water imagery. This is a model that shows the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, and there's basically three features that I want to point out. Here's the model by Monday, June the 28th. That's the area of that disturbed weather currently right now here into the Western Gulf. That's going to continue moving off into the west. By the time Monday rolls around, that's going to bring a slug of moisture to the Texas coastline and bringing more rain down here to the south into Houston and into San Antonio, into Austin, as well as that cold front that's going to be emerging off from the north. So there's going to be a squeeze play coming into effect that's going to bring a lot of rain to Oklahoma and getting into Texas as we go into next week. But back behind it, there's also another slug of moisture that'll be impacting going into the Caribbean, especially as we go into Jamaica by Monday. This will continue pushing off into the Cayman Islands. And here's back here, that is our tropical wave currently with that third slug of moisture. It's currently back here off the African coast. So as we go through time, this is the model by July the 2nd. As we go through Friday, that piece of energy will start to shift further west. There's another piece of energy that breaks off and will bring it back over Jamaica. But there's that tropical wave. And down here to the south, this is your 10 north heights down here. And you can definitely see it's going to be traveling south of that dust, and so this could be a window as it goes into a little bit more of those warmer waters that I kind of showed you, that we could start to see a little bit more tropical development, and definitely a little bit more spin trying to start to develop, and as it gets into more of a conducive environment as we go into that time frame. And you can definitely see this is your wind shear by the time we get into July the 1st time frame. Yeah, that's the area, that's the disturbed weather. It's going to be down here by the Lesser Antilles. And look at this shear. There's not much to speak of. So it definitely goes into a little bit more favorable environment for it to kind of get its act together as it continues pushing off into the Caribbean by then. But yeah, by the time we get into next weekend, this is your July 3rd, July 4th time frame as we go into the holiday weekend. Yeah, look at this. I mean, that's where that tropical wave, yes, could definitely start getting its act together. This would imply it would be pushing just a little bit further south of the island of Jamaica, but a lot of these are right side, right front quadrant loaded. So this would be on onshore flow and bring probably flooding rains to the island of Jamaica as this continues pushing off into the west as we go through your holiday weekend. So it's definitely going to be on the lookout in Jamaica for this potential storm that could be impacting you guys as we go into next weekend with some very heavy rain. Could be producing mudslides by then, And as this, some wind gusts of 40 to 60 mile per hour is not out of the question, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But another feature that could be, bring why this is going to probably try to develop, here's the temperature anomalies as we go into next weekend. As you recall, this weekend, we've got that brutal heat wave that's going to be taking place in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, all-time record is going to be completely shattered. And it's record breaking. I mean, it's almost life threatening up there because a lot of these areas don't have AC. So definitely this is some brutal stuff that's going to be impacting the Pacific Northwest this weekend, and especially as we go into Monday. But as we continue throughout the week, here's the temperature anomalies as we go through next weekend. That heat wave will slowly kind of lose its luster and shift further off into the east. And as it does that, as we go into next weekend, that brings the tropical disturbance off here in the Caribbean. That will cause divergence underneath and also help this feature down here in the Caribbean get its act together. By then will just be another piece of energy that'll could be bringing this to help induce this tropical storm development as we go into next weekend. So look at the water temperatures as we go, currently going into the Caribbean, as we go into, get into the Lesser Antilles. You can definitely see as we go into the Caribbean, yeah, you start to see some of those darker reds showing up. So all this area, 82, 84 degrees, is very conducive for tropical storm development with that divergence underneath. We got a little bit lower wind chill by then. So definitely as we go into next weekend, we definitely be looking at possibly some sort of tropical storm development in the Caribbean, possibly south of the island of Jamaica, going to be impacting Jamaica with some flooding rains and some higher wind gust for the island. And here's the latest vorticity index on the latest European model as we go into the next weekend, and definitely shows a lot of rotation down here to the south of the island of Jamaica. So it's all this activity is trying to come together as it goes into the Caribbean with a little bit less wind shear, a little bit warmer waters, got that divergence up top with the ridge over troubled waters. So all this activity is trying to come together for some sort of tropical storm development as we go into next weekend, down here to the south, possibly south of the island of Jamaica. And this will continue pushing off into the west, northwest as we go through time. So let's look at the wind speed. Yeah, definitely saying the same thing. Yeah, this could be with a little bit of vorticity south of Jamaica. We could be looking at that onshore flow of these 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gust, possibly setting up shop by the time we get into next weekend with some of those on top of those heavier rains. And here's the latest, simulated satellite imagery as well as we go into next weekend. We got the ridge over the top. We got the little bit of cold front bringing some that disturbed weather down here into Texas and much of the southeast. But we got the ridge over troubled waters, and we got that activity over the Caribbean, possibly going to the Cayman Islands as we'll continue shifting off into the west northwest as we go through time. So definitely be on the lookout if you're in the Caribbean by the time next weekend rolls around of this potential tropical disturbance bringing some flooding rains, especially to Jamaica, going to the Cayman Islands, and also eventually lifting off west northwest, possibly going to the Gulf by then. But that's a long ways away. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after storm.